I'm Adrian Ghobrial. Tomorrow morning, shortly after 10 a.m., serial killer Bruce McArthur will be sentenced. What we know is that he'll get life in jail. What we don't know is when he'll be eligible to apply for parole. That was the debate that took place here inside 361 University this week. The prosecution is asking for 50 years. They want to make sure McArthur is long gone before he's ever eligible to sit before a parole board. That would take him to 116 years of age. The defense believes that's a little bit heavy-handed. They're asking for the minimum 25 years. That would bring McArthur to 91 years of age. Today I spoke with former prosecutor David Butt as we discussed the juggling act, or the fine balance that Superior Court Justice John McMahon is trying to find.
How do you ever capture the grief of the families in a number like 25, 35, 40? Frankly, the number 10,000 isn't enough. We do have the fact that he pled guilty and saved not only the community the expense of a big, long, complicated trial, but also saved the victims' families the emotional heartache of a big, long trial. That puts a little bit of downward pressure on the number.
And the judge is duty-bound to take that into account.
Absolutely. That's something that must be taken into account. The next thing you have to consider is how old is Mr. McArthur, and what does that number mean? 116 starts to press the limits of reality. There aren't very many 116-year-olds out there. So the number starts to depart from reality. And we don't go the route of some American jurisdictions where you get 250 years. That has no connection to the reality of a human lifespan.
The prosecution has argued that their number of 50 is a measured number. It's not too high, it's not too low. It will confirm for the families that they will never have to relive this through a parole hearing.
Those are legitimate concerns to take into account. On the other hand, the defense did make some good points as well about the guilty plea saving not only tremendous state resources, but also saving, again, the families the agony of going through a trial.
We heard the Wettlaufer case used as an example by the prosecution even before the defense brought it up, saying, we know that you're going to bring up Wettlaufer. She killed 8 people. She got 25 years, though they argue that she is a different type of killer, that she put signals out to try to, as calls for help, whereas Bruce McArthur was a calculated, cold killer.
There's probably, in terms of comparing the two, a greater understanding of the psychological and emotional deficits that the Wettlaufer case made clear. Whereas here, it's quite true, you have a certain amount of predatory, calculated, perhaps one could say more cruel behavior.
In your experience, how do you believe Justice McMahon might rule tomorrow?
The lawyers on both sides are in the hands of a master when it comes to Justice McMahon. He is a true artist in taking these competing arguments and balancing them fairly and coming up with the best possible result. No result's perfect, but the best possible result.
Lawyer David Butt believes Justice McMahon will rule somewhere between the minimum 25 and the 50 years that the prosecution is requesting before McArthur will be eligible for parole. Now, the spotlight on the situation has prompted a Conservative MP to table a private member's bill that would increase parole ineligibility for convicted killers up to 40 years from the minimum 25.